Did you know this? Malaria still kills hundreds of thousands of people around the world each year, and local researchers recently announced that they believe they may be closer to a vaccine.
Well, scientists from the Center for Infectious Disease Research are thinking outside the box with an experimental trial now. Casey and Travis have the details.
And joining us now, the lead researcher on the team, Dr. Stefan Kapa. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. This is such an intriguing topic.
It really is. Let's start, though, with the trial. I mean, this has been something you've been working on for like a decade now. Explain to us what it is and where you are in this project.
Yeah, so it takes a decade because malaria vaccine development is extremely difficult. People have tried for 100 years to develop a malaria vaccine with limited success. We have an advanced vaccine candidate that is produced by a pharmaceutical company which gives about 30% protection, which is not sufficient for malaria. So we need to come up with new and innovative ideas to develop a vaccine. And a vaccine is really the most effective way to control, eliminate, and eradicate malaria, which is obviously a disease of global importance affecting a lot of people worldwide. So it takes a long time because it requires research. It requires research in the laboratory, tinkering around in the laboratory and finding new things, finding new ways of designing the vaccine. And you do first studies outside humans, and then when you are convinced that it works in humans, you move to human studies. And we did this trial in human volunteers here in the Seattle area who were recruited from the Seattle area from all walks of life who participated in this trial, including myself.
You participated in the trial as well?
Yes, I was part of the trial, and I enjoyed it very much.
You did? So, I mean, I've never been, except for, like, when I was in college and you could do experiments for psychology where they tried to make you feel bad about yourself and you took a test about it later. I've never been a part of a medical trial, and people volunteer for this. How do you find the right people, and then what are you doing, and how long are you following them?
Yeah, so we're advertising for these trials, and we are recruiting volunteers in collaboration with our major partner for this, the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, in partnership with our Center for Infectious Disease Research. And then we get interested people calling in and saying, hey, this sounds fascinating. And you will be surprised what's the motives, what's the reasons why they do this. Some say, oh, my father had malaria when he was fighting in the war. Or some people say, I've been traveling to Africa and my child got malaria, although it was taking pills. Or it is people who know about global health problems and want to contribute.
So what you did here is basically re-engineer or genetically engineer the parasite itself. But when you say genetic engineering, people get kind of freaked out. So would you explain in pretty simple terms what it is that you did here that might protect all of us around the world, really?
Yeah, so we take the whole organism, the whole parasite that causes malaria, and we snip out genes out of what we call the genome, which is all the genes that make you what you are and makes a parasite what the parasite is. And 5,000 genes in the parasite, very complex organism, nearly as complex as cells in your own body. And we had to spend a very long time finding the right genes because we couldn't delete too many genes because then that would kill the parasite. And a killed parasite does not work as a vaccine. It has to be alive, but it has to be defanged. It has to be rendered harmless. It has to be safe. So 3 genes are deleted from the parasite, and that's basically a subtraction. We don't add anything in. So when it comes to the genetic engineering and the concerns about genetically altered organisms, I think we are fine because we're just removing things from the organism. We're not adding anything on.
What is it about Seattle that makes it such an innovative place? We see, so many advances in technology, in medicine. I know that you had an early supporter in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for some of the earlier trials. You mentioned work with Fred Hutch. Why is that so important, and what is it about this region that enables things like this to come forward?
Yeah, I love working in Seattle. I'm originally from Germany and worked in New York before, and then I came to Seattle, and I just find this a very unique place. People are very outward oriented. They're not looking inward, just concerned with their own affairs, but they're really interested in the world. We are at the Pacific Rim, so people are very much oriented towards countries that suffer from malaria, in Asia, for example. So they know about this. And just the global health community here is very active and very integrated and very collaborative, I would say. So our work with the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, the University of Washington, of course, our Center for Infectious Disease Research, really work closely together to solve these global health problems. And you mentioned the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which obviously contributes greatly to fund global health work, to come up with new interventions that can prevent diseases and can help alleviate this tremendous burden globally that some of these diseases cause. And yes, the foundation has initially funded us, but then they stopped funding us, and funding was picked up by the Department of Defense because they want a vaccine for U.S. soldiers. Imagine U.S. soldiers get deployed around the world, and they're always exposed to malaria. So the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, wants a malaria vaccine, and so does the National Institutes of Health, which will support the next trial.
Really quickly, because we only have a couple of seconds, is this the beginning of the end of malaria?
I would certainly hope so. I think it looks very promising. Of course, we need to do more clinical testing and demonstrate that it is highly effective in preventing malaria. But from all we know, all the studies that we have done and others have done, our prediction is that it will be a highly effective vaccine. And that I know for sure. A highly effective vaccine for malaria will be the solution to malaria.
Wow, groundbreaking doesn't even begin to describe it. Dr. Stefan Kapa, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.